What's up, guys? Just was checking my email. Got a question from a guy. Um, I'm gonna try and pronounce this. Inzanaridaz. Inzaneridaz. Uh, Sent me a message and he asked some really good questions. Pretty much, he has the first rendition of this freehand sharpening kit that I put together. It was inspired by Solo's knife reviews, and he was saying that he's practiced with a lot, and he's actually getting mirror edges, and he's using the sharpie trick, and it's clearing all the sharpie off the edge. So he knows for one that he's hitting his bevel, but there's kind of some trick, not really a trick, just something you need to look for there, and I'm going to get to that. And he also knows he's getting a mirror polish, but he just has no clue why his edges are as sharp as mine, and he has no clue why I can cut paper at the early steps of the process, and he can't cut paper at the end. And he also notes that running his fingernail along the edge, you can't feel anything, but the edge catches in paper. And that's a good indication of some other things that I'll hit on. I just freehanded this knife tonight. Put a nice little edge on it. Not super mirrored or anything, just a nice, extremely toothy edge. D2 likes to get toothy anyway, even with a polished edge. Anyway, I'm going to use this knife to demonstrate some ideas. First off, you say that the Sharpie is being cleared off the edge. Even if you're making good strokes and you're clearing the Sharpie off the edge, unless you look at it under magnification, you can't really tell if you've cleared the Sharpie all the way to the apex and at the shoulder. So the Sharpie is a good indication of correct angle, as a crude form of correct angle, but there's much more minute changes that can happen that the Sharpie won't really show. So that it is a good indication. I'm glad you're clearing the Sharpie. That means that your angle is set somewhat right, and you're probably getting it right most of the time. What I suspect is happening, it could be two possibilities. The first possibility that I suspect may be happening is this is a really weird angle for me, so bear with me. You're sharpening, right, and you're running your blade along the stone. Sometimes, since we're human, we'll go under angle, which is fine. You're just going to hit the shoulder. As long as you don't do it much, you're not going to change the angle of the knife or anything. That's fine. What I suspect you may be doing sometimes is coming up and actually going over angle a little bit, and you're actually coming here and you've got a nice apex built up, and then it may be one stroke where you accidentally go over angle and you just flatten that apex. You're pretty much just dulling your knife, essentially, if you go over angle and you dig into the stone. It's not something that you're even going to feel if you do it in a minute way, but it is enough to damage the edge so much that it's going to hinder you from getting a hair whittling edge. So it's not going to be like your edge is sliding off paper, but you're going to feel drag and other imperfections in the edge. And that's just it could be due to you sharpening. You may go under a little bit, which is fine, or you just may go over. And I've done it 100 times. Watch yourself if you're doing that. If you do find yourself, listen to the stone. You can hear good angle, you can hear under angle, and you can definitely hear and feel over angle. If you feel that, let me back up for a second. I actually would recommend that you get a cheap knife, and sharpen it a little bit, set your angle, and then go over angle on purpose. And feel what that feels like. Get used to the feeling of going over angle so you know what it feels like. So during your sharpening process, if you accidentally go over angle and run it down the stone, you can feel it and recognize it and rectify it. If I ever do that, and I do sometimes, All you need to do is go back to step one and reset the bevel. Make sure you're paying attention to your strokes. Lock your body, lock your wrist, and rock at the hips and use your elbows. That's possibility number one, that you're going over angle. Probably the most likely scenario, but it could be the second scenario, could be a combination of the two. There's really no telling unless you make a video of yourself sharpening in detail and then let us watch it. But the second possibility is that you are actually never going over angle. It could be that you're going under angle and you're never actually apexing the edge on the higher grit stone. So say you get the coarse DMT and you set the edge on the coarse DMT. You mark it with Sharpie and then move up a stone. You see that the Sharpie's cleared off, but unless you look, unless you're trained to know, i.e. trained, I mean just experienced, unless you know that you've apexed the edge, the Sharpie isn't going to tell you every time. You need to really look under magnification. You need to feel with your fingers. You just need to make sure you're apexing the edge on each successive stone. So you could set the edge with a coarse DMT, and you can actually polish the bevel on a knife without ever really reaching the apex ever again. You could be writing on, so let's zoom in here and I'll show you what I'm talking about. You could be sharpening your edge and you could be doing good, and then you could lay the stone like that, and you see that microscopic gap in there. You can see just a tiny gap in between the apex of the edge and the stone. You can actually go through the whole process and get a mirror edge, and it will look fantastic, but it won't be sharp because you're never apexing the edge. You really need to make sure you apex the edge on each stone when you're setting the bevel and every stone throughout the process. Make sure you're apexing the edge. Make sure you're clearing the edge of all the Sharpie. Look at it under magnification. I suggest getting a loop, a magnifying glass, microscope, anything you can. There's an awesome pocket microscope at most every Radio Shack. Costs $12. It's awesome. On each stone change, make sure that you are refining the scratch pattern all the way to the apex of the edge with every stone. And when I say make sure you're apexing the edge, for those of you who may not know what that means, let me grab a pen and I'll show you. This may be rudimentary sharpening 101 for some people, but some people may not know what this means. When I'm talking about apexing the edge, I mean you're looking at the knife at this angle head on. Disregard that. What I mean by apexing the edge is you are reaching the very, very tip of the edge. The very, very tip. That's the part that's doing the cutting. This is actually the part that's getting sharpened. And what I mean when you're under apexing is you could be laying the stone or laying the edge on the stone like that. So you could be sharpening all this right here, all this bevel. This could get a mirror polish, but this right here, the apex, may never be touched the whole time you're sharpening, or from the very first coarse stone all the way through. So you could actually get all this back here polished with the apex being left at the very first stone, which is a DMT coarse. Or you could go through the whole process, get a mirror edge without ever really touching the apex of the edge, in which case it would leave you with essentially the same edge as before, except all this through here would be polished, and this would be exactly the same as when you started. So I'm trying to make this as concise as possible. It's kind of hard to explain. It's really hard to explain actually, but hopefully I'm making sense. Make sure that you're apexing the edge. The easiest way to do that is to form a burr on each and every grit. A lot of people will tell you not to form a burr because it's a waste of material. But if you're a novice sharpener, then forming a burr on each and every grit on each side of the knife is pretty much the only way to know that you have apexed the edge on that grit. So let's say I have a DMT course and I'm going all the way through the 306 UF. Let's say I'm hitting the bevel, I'm clearing the sharpie, but I never truly apex the edge. I can be left with a mirror edge that essentially has a DMT course apex on it. So I still have a really rough, unrefined cutting edge with a mirror polish bevel. So make sure you're forming a burr on each and every grit. I suggest getting some kind of high power magnification. The $12 pocket microscope from Radio Shack is excellent. It will allow you to see your scratch pattern really well. It'll allow you to know that you are clearing the scratch pattern from the previous stone all the way to the apex. Something that the Sharpie just cannot do because it's not that precise. Your eyes can't see on a microscopic level, unfortunately. So first scenario that you're over apexing, I'm just going to recap. Get a cheap knife, set the bevel, and then over apex it. Go over angle a couple times. Get used to the way it feels so you can notice if you're doing it during sharpening. And the opposite of that, which is going under angle. The Sharpie is good. Make sure you clear the Sharpie, but also before you move on from each stone, make sure that you have fully apexed the edge with a magnification, and make sure you apex the edge with every single stone from then on out on each side of the knife. That's pretty much the only two things that you could be doing wrong with freehand stones. And the third possibility is that you never truly reach the apex of the edge with any of the stones, in which case you're left with a nice shiny bevel, but you never really sharpened the actual cutting part of the edge, which is the very, very tip of the edge. So I hope this answered your questions and helped anybody else that had any questions about sharpening. Maybe this cleared up some questions that you didn't know you had. I don't know. All I can do is try. But anyway, after thinking about it, those are pretty much the only possibilities when you're not getting a sharp edge. Let me sit here and try and think. You could be forming a huge burr and then breaking that burr off, but that's not a possibility, or it's definitely a possibility, but not likely. Those two possibilities are pretty much it as far as I can think of right now. I'm sure something will come to mind when I wake up tomorrow morning and I can't make a video. If something else does come to mind, I'll do another video. So anyway, let me know if this helps. If it didn't help and you have more questions, send me another message and I'll try and accommodate you as best as I possibly can. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.